welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Of course, I'm so excited about all the things that you do, and I want to jump in and ask you so many questions. But first of all, can you just explain to everybody who you are and how you became a hospice and palliative care nurse?
So, I am Penny Smith, and I am a nationally certified in the US hospice and palliative care nurse. I've been a hospice nurse for about 20 years, and it's kind of a long story how I got into it. I'll try to summarize. I went to nursing school when I was 40. My former stepmother-in-law had died a year before that of cancer on hospice. And I was just so enamored with the nurses who cared for her. I felt like the work they were doing was very sacred. And I had a bit of a rough go when I was in my early years and felt like I kind of owed it to the universe, if you will,
Mm.
to make up for the transgressions of my youth. And so it felt like a good fit for me. I also had really bad death anxiety, and I thought that maybe if I did some, like exposure to death and dying, that would help with my death anxiety. And it did actually. So,
Yeah. Oh, how fascinating. Obviously, you were preaching to the choir because I'm all about, obviously, every single day I'm dealing with grief and death and processing all of that. And I love how you are so committed to, I guess, normalizing like the end of life process for people. And I guess there's a lot of stigmas around it, there's a lot of fear around it. So, what are your thoughts on that? How have you sort of started to, I guess, put things into place to educate people on how incredibly peaceful it can also be for people? Can you just explain your thoughts on all of that?
yeah, sure. So it comes from being working in hospice and observing the difference in a death experience, both for the person who's dying and their family, when they have been prepared for that and they know what's unfolding is normal, versus when they haven't been prepared, and how the death experience can be so scary. And seeing so many family members who would be in a panic over something they were observing with their dying person, and I would say, oh, that's normal, we see that all the time, and their relief was palpable. They were like, oh, it's normal. Yeah, it's normal. Oh, okay. Like, people just want to know that what's happening is normal. That makes it okay. Even sometimes when it's something that is just really scary, like a death rattle, when somebody's gurgling when they're dying and they're afraid they're going to choke on those secretions. They're not, but they're worried about that. When you say it's just a noise, it's normal. Oh, it's normal. Yeah, yeah, it is. So that's kind of how, it started for me, was just experiencing that, working as a hospice nurse. And then it just kind of, as I got onto social media in 2020, when the pandemic was going on and everything was shut down, I found that it was another way for me to reach people, um, and be able to help them through these fears.
Yeah, and I think too, you don't know until you're in it. You don't know until you're watching somebody pass and all the process, and it's heavy. It's full on. Like you see these amazing people who were strong and, full of life, and now you're seeing them like a shadow of themselves. And like I've watched most recently, my wife's father pass away, and he was this big, tall guy full of beans, like heavy, and at the end, Jade was lifting him up. Like he was like
Mhm.
40 kilos. She could literally put her hands underneath him and she was carrying him like to his bed. Like this
Mhm.
was unlike anything I've ever experienced. And, just to see his drawn face and, he's trying to talk, but it's not the same. It's almost like his voice changed because he couldn't get the words out. And just watching that, I was just blown away by the way of the nurses that were working with him. Like, they just, because he's a cheeky kind of guy. So he would try it on, like, oh, I can get up by myself. I can do that. And they're like, all right then, Michael, sure thing. Like, they were really helpful and they had banter with him. And that's what you want. You want them to feel comfortable. And so I have so much respect for what you do. And so the way that you work, do you work for an organization? Do you work for yourself? Like how do things operate for you these days?
Yeah, so I work for an organization and I actually don't do patient care anymore. I do quality assurance for a hospice company. It's
Mm,
part of the Medicare insurance, which is what governs hospice in the US, is a
mm,
requirement for quality programs. And so I went into quality. I was at the bedside
mm,
a lot for many, many years
mm,
and kind of got tired of the commute. I wasn't burned out on the care of the patients, but I
mhm.
was commuting in Seattle. And so I was ready for a change. And now I'm actually about to retire. On June 3rd, I'm retiring. So
Oh,
getting
amazing.
very, very close to the end there. But,
Yeah.
to your point, so my girlfriend's husband is dying right now on hospice of cancer. And so we met because she found me on social media and I posted a story on Instagram when I was doing my laundry and she recognized the laundromat and said, "Oh my gosh, I think you're my neighbor." And she wrote to me and said, I was looking for hospice and I found you and I think we're neighbors." So we met and I've been kind of talking along the whole way with her about things and she read my book and the other day she texted me and she said, "This morning he woke up and he was reaching to the ceiling and he said very, very clearly, 'Hi.'" And I said, "Isn't it the coolest thing that you can see something like that? And knowing that that's something to be expected, you get to actually feel like the sacredness of what you have just observed
Mhm.
rather than just being like, 'Oh, what's he talking about? I need medication. He's hallucinating.'" It's
Yeah.
just it's so cool when people know what to expect and they can just
Mhm.
really kind of just be in that moment and just be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm present for something that's really important." And I
Yeah.
think we don't talk about death enough. And like you're
Mhm.
talking about your father-in-law and what he looked like at the end, totally different. Not what you
Mhm.
see on TV, right? On TV,
No.
they're all peaceful. They close their eyes. And in real life, their eyes are usually open. Sometimes they
Yeah.
look like they've changed color. Their
Mhm.
mouth is hanging open. They look totally different.
They do.
So this is why, it's important to educate people so that they can just really have a good death experience. I think it's so important because there's no do-overs, you get one chance. And I see a lot of people who have guilt over their experience, or fear after the fact and saying it was a horrible experience. And I'll
Mm.
say, "Well, what was happening?" "Oh, they were doing this and they were doing that." And I'll be like, "That's actually normal. That's what they do at the end of life." He wasn't
Yeah.
suffering at all.
Mhm.
They're worried that their person suffered.
Yeah, I think there's so much guilt and burdens that people carry from the end of life, watching someone go through that. And even people who have had dementia, who aren't themselves, and they're like, oh my gosh, they've been suffering for years and watching them decline. And then the way that they died was so traumatizing. And you hear so many people have these stories. And I just, from a spiritual point of view, and what I feel when I'm reading for clients and channeling those people is we were fine. It was all right. Everything happened the way it was supposed to. We had a part in that and we knew what was happening and we were just allowing our bodies to just go to where they needed to go and then our souls went where they needed to go. And I think that as humans, if we're not, as you said, prepared or we're not aware or we don't know what we're looking at or what's going on, we instantly panic when things don't feel normal. It's like, oh, that's not
Yes.
normal.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like, is that a thing? Like, what are they doing? Kind of thing. So I totally get what you mean. And I think it's really important that people do educate themselves on this if they know this is coming, if they know that it's the end of life. Talk to the nurses, ask the questions, like you're not being a burden. Like they want to make you feel just as comfortable as they do for the patient, because then it's a calm environment, I assume.
Well, I go one further and say it's coming. It's coming for all of us. So you don't have to
Yeah.
wait until your person is actually diagnosed with a terminal illness and they're going to go on hospice. The sooner that you're able to talk about it, because it's an uncomfortable subject. So
Yeah.
if you can start talking about it before you're actually facing it head on, it's
Hmm.
easier to have that conversation.
Hmm.
And I found that a lot with social media because all my patients and their families they're facing it. It's happening right now. And a
Yeah.
lot of people on social media It's like they're learning about this way in advance, you
Hmm.
know. And so it's easier to talk about it.
Yeah, I think so too. And the thing that I was just thinking before when you were talking about, like when your friend's partner said hi, like there was somebody there or there was something they were
Yes.
acknowledging. I need to go back to that because I'm so fascinated with how many people you've obviously been with towards the end of their life and what they might say or what their epiphanies are, or if they do have spiritual connections that you've witnessed for yourself. What are your thoughts on that? Have you changed the way that you sort of think about, I guess, the other side because of what you've experienced?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. So I did not have any religious beliefs. Growing up, my parents were like probably agnostic or atheist, I don't even know, but I had no religious upbringing and don't believe in heaven, I don't believe in hell. So I had no concept of the afterlife, which is kind of what drove my death anxiety, worrying about what's after death? Oh my God, what if it's nothing? And so then going into hospice and seeing people visioning at the end of life, which is very common, changed me. I mean, it changed me. I really, there's no way you can watch that and not believe that they are seeing who they say that they're seeing. It's so profound. And I mean, I've had people that just were crying and they're like, oh, there's my wife, she's right there, like. But one of the coolest things that I've, and people don't, like, a lot of times people will say, well, what do people regret? And I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about what they regret at the end of life. They're kind of in the moment, and I don't
Mm,
really question them a whole lot about what they're seeing because again, it's their experience, and I have asked who is that or whatever, but
yeah.
not like what are they wearing, what are they saying, because it's that's their experience. But
Mm,
the most amazing story that I ever heard was I had this patient that was admitted on a Friday, and the admit nurse admitted her. I was working the weekend, and so on Saturday I went over there and I met her and her daughter, and she had come home, she had gone home on hospice from the hospital. So she was still in a hospital gown, and there was like a lot going on with this lady. She was really transitioning, like she was getting to
mm,
this point where she's like more dying than living, and she's going to be
mm,
probably dying in the next few days. And so I like spent a lot of time with the daughter and changing her and putting a catheter in, getting medications on board. And then I
mm,
saw her on Sunday. And then on Monday, the daughter calls me and says, she died. And I was not seeing her. She wasn't going to be my patient. I was just floating to see her on the weekend. But her
mm.
daughter calls me and she says, I want to tell you what happened. She said, Mom was holding her hands up and she was saying that there were windows and she could see time, like in her life, like these things that happened. And she was holding her hands up. And then she looked at her hands and she said to her daughter, Am I going to need these? And her daughter said, Your hands? I don't know. And then she said, she started motioning to her chest and she said, Am I going to need this? And her daughter said, Your gown? And she said, No, this. And she was motioning to her skin. And I was like, Oh my God, that was just the coolest thing ever. Like she was so self-aware. She could see all this stuff in her life, and was like, Am I going to need this skin anymore? I don't, like it was just amazing. And just all those
Wow.
experiences really changed me. And I totally now believe in an afterlife. I mean, and my dad came to me after he died too. So that was something that really
Oh. Oh, I love
made me,
that. Oh, how
yeah,
fascinating. Because what we are aware of, or what most mediums sort of, I guess, know now we've been working with the other side, is how there's this notion of like a life review. Like when you
yeah,
go to the other side and you get all these snippets of amazing things that happen in your life and things maybe you could have done better or where you were growing. And that it just mirrors exactly what I think it would be like these windows or like these pockets of time that you get to revisit really quickly. How
yep.
fascinating that even before her soul had left her physical body, that her soul was already starting to do that process. Incredible. So
Well,
amazing.
You know what they say about the veil, like the veil is thinning out or the veil is lifting. There's definitely a period of time when people are dying a natural death. Not everybody, because sometimes people die really fast, but
Mm.
when they go through this transition period where it's almost like they're here, but they're not here. They're like
Yeah,
somewhere else. We always say you got to reorient them because they're not really all here. And
yeah.
I think that's part of it. That's what they're doing is possibly,
Mm.
I don't know, seeing. And then when they're
Yeah.
dying, like when they're actively dying, and I don't know if you observed this in your father-in-law, but
Mm.
there comes a time when like the lights are on, but nobody's home. Like they get
Yeah.
this glazed over look in their eyes. They're not looking at anything anymore. They're still
Hmm.
there. And one time we had a patient at the care center whose daughter was a nun, and a bunch of nuns were visiting her all the time. And one evening, the last visitor came out. She was a nun, and she said, "She's gone." And I said, "Oh," and I grabbed my stethoscope, and she goes, "No, no, no. Her body's still doing the work of dying, but her spirit has left. You can see it in her eyes."
Yeah.
And that was just like, whoa. I mean, I went in there after she left, and I was like, holy crap, she was totally right. Like, you could
Oh.
really, like, nobody's there. They're still here, but they're not here. They're somewhere else.
Oh my God, that gave me goosebumps, like as you said that. It's so true. It's like you hear of souls leaving the body before their physical body breaks down. And that's why often spirit will say, I didn't feel that pain. I didn't feel anything because their soul's like, all right, then, body, you continue to shut down. I'm going. I'm ready for the next chapter, kind of thing. So, how amazing that you've had the opportunity to observe that and to have that peace of knowing that there's so much more to life than this, genuinely. And I'm so excited about your book. Obviously, in your background is
Thank
your banner for
you.
your book. So, what is your
Yeah.
book about? What inspired you to write it? What can we expect to, I guess, learn from it?
Well, it's a memoir. And as I said, I had a rough go when I was younger, did lots of problems with drugs and went to jail and had to really like turn my life around.
Mm.
But it's kind of it's a teaching memoir because it's about my life before becoming a hospice nurse, how I became a hospice nurse, and what I learned as a hospice nurse. So there's education in there around death and dying and philosophical things along the way that I've learned. And so it's kind of got everything. If anybody is watching my content on social media, I always say, if you like my content, you'll love my book because it's a lot reflected in my book of like what I do on social media. There's humor in it, but there's also things that are moving that will make you cry and educational. It's kind of just it's all over the place. But it's
I
it's
love
it's
that.
a it's my life story though.
Oh, how fascinating. I think too, it's so amazing how far you've come. Like it's almost like you've had like different versions of you. And like you
Oh
couldn't
yeah.
be this version of you without having gone through everything that you went through. So you probably wouldn't be who you are today if you hadn't have had some of those bumps in the road, I guess we could say.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. People like to say hospice nurses are angels, and I always cringe when I hear that because I'm like, I am no angel. If you read my book, you'll know I am no angel. But I mean, to be a hospice nurse, you really have to have a strong character,
Yeah.
and I was a bartender for years. That makes me a really great listener and
Oh yeah.
counselor. I mean, the things that I went through really, really strengthened who I am as a person and helped me to be a good advocate for my patients and a compassionate, because
Mm.
that's there's not everybody's perfect, and you're taking care of hospice patients. Some of them have had
Mm.
their own. We all have, like everybody has their things in life that they go through. And so it helps me to be very non-biased and non-judgmental to all of my patients, no matter who they are, where they live, what they've done, what they do. It's helped
Mm.
me to have that compassion for people.
Yes, I feel there's something that's just come into my mind that's super random, but I just thought obviously you're an advocate for your patient, like you're looking after them, but things might get a little bit complicated when you have family involved and if there's family dramas or this person can't see that person and what's going on with this person. And have you dealt with a lot of like have you been the middleman for some family dramas when it comes to end of life? Like how do you handle that? Like, oh, do you
Yeah.
want to call that person? No, they're not welcome. Like, I can imagine there would be a lot going on.
Yeah, there is. It's a lot of stress and emotional trauma, and like lot, especially when there's multiple family members and they're not all on the same page, or there's family members
Mm.
that live far away. And the last time they saw their Aunt Pauline, she looked great. That was just 3 months ago. Now, what do you mean she's dying? There's all kinds of things that can happen. And the way that is best to handle it is to not to try to think you can change that. Definitely have to mediate and have family care conferences with the social worker, with our
Mm.
chaplain, get
Mhm.
everybody on the same page if possible, but also to remind ourselves that we are only there for like a snapshot. We are there for only a few, like in the whole scheme of their life, we're like there for this much time, and those dynamics have been going on for years. That stuff's been festering for a long, long time, and we can't fix it. We can't try to fix it. That's what can cause people to really burn out, is if they're trying to fix this family that's so messed up, and you can't fix it. You just have to try to meet them where they're at and work with them as best as you can. And sometimes I mean, I've had situations. I talk about a story in my book where I had this patient whose son was not medicating her appropriately. He was living with her. She was in pain, and he was doing it out of his love for her, but it came off as him being selfish, and so his sister had to get custody of her and pulled her out of the house and put her in a nursing home. And then he was harassing the staff, and the staff said, you can't come here anymore. And she was dying, and he was like so upset and just broke down. We were standing outside of the nursing home, and he was just all of a sudden he just broke down. And I just said, you cannot. I said, she's dying. And if you want to be with her, you have to stop interfering with her care. You have to stop, or you're not going to be able to go back in there. And so, I was able to get him to agree that he would let the nurses do their job. And she was actively dying, but she was lingering for a long time. And then he went in there and he sat down with her and held her hand, and he was able to be with her when she died. And I think she was waiting for him to be there with her when she died. But being able to look at him, like, not being mad at him because he's being selfish, but kind of in a way, I kept thinking about my brother and thinking about how hard it is for him that he's losing his mom. He's just not accepting it.
Mm.
So, sometimes we just have to try to be compassionate, meet them where they're at. And then there's times when we're like, you don't get to come here at all anymore because you're actually causing harm. And that's happened before too, where we've had to involve adult protective services and say, this person is over medicating. They're
Mm.
causing harm. I had one patient whose daughter kept putting him in these soft handcuffs because he was agitated. When I'm giving her medication that she can give to him, but she's wanting to have him handcuffed to the bed, I'm like, do not. That's not, no, and we have to call adult protective services and then get him out of there and get him someplace safe.
Oh
But
my
those
God.
those situations are not as common, fortunately.
Hmm.
It's more often people that get to where they need to be to you know coexist and be with their person that's dying. But there are those cases that are hard.
Oh my gosh, the handcuffs, I just can't. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
let's just strap you to the bed and hope it helps. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
But you
they
know
were the
what?
they were fuzzy ones. They were the furry ones.
Oh my God. Some people's ideas, but it's probably coming from such a incredible state of grief and just like psychosis from not knowing what the hell you're supposed to be doing. Like I can only imagine what was going through that person's head when they thought of that. Like it's
Yeah.
just that's not coping. That's not coping with
No.
the situation or potentially even with life. Oh my God.
No. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I guess I just want to tap into with you what how has this changed your life? Like I think a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could ever work with people who are dying, or I couldn't work at a funeral home, it'd be too hard. Like there's so much stigma around what you do, and I guess the industry too of working in patient care. And but how has it changed you? Like obviously you've come a really long way, and this is one of the things that's turned your life around. How like how has it impacted you, or what would you say are like some defining lessons you've learned?
Well, like I said, the death anxiety have I've overcome the death anxiety. That was a big one. But I would say when you take care of people who are dying, who are your age or younger,
Oh
at
yeah.
any age I've ever been as a hospice nurse, it really makes you appreciate life and try to do the things that I really want to do now while I'm alive. Like not waiting until I'm dying to try to check off the bucket list, like doing the things that I really feel passionate about or that bring me joy, like um, I'm still human. And so if a spoon gets stuck in the drawer and I can't open it, I'm still going to go like this and get really mad at the drawer. Like I still get mad about things, but I try to not sweat the small stuff as much anymore and
Mm,
just really try to appreciate life. And that's why I'm retiring, because especially when COVID hit, and the pandemic came along and people were just dying right and left. I mean, at that point I'd already been a hospice nurse for 15 years, so I've already have it ingrained in my psyche that we're all going to die someday, but it was just so prevalent at that time. And my husband and I have this property in eastern Washington state in the mountains, and we've had it for, gosh, 17 years or so. And we eventually we used to camp on it. Then we built a cabin and we'd go and camp. And at that time, we sheltered in place there. And I said, I think we should just move here. I just think we should just do it. So my job became completely virtual because I'm doing quality assurance. He took an early retirement from his job and we just moved to the mountains. And if you would have told me when I was this clubber in the 80s in my spandex pants and crop tops and pink hair, which I still have, but big hair, like that I would someday be living in a cabin off the grid in the mountains in Eastern Washington, I would have been like, you are crazy. There's no way I would ever do something like that. And yet here I am. And I love it. I love it. I love gardening. I love being out taking a walk on the mountain and just being in nature. It's just, I really appreciate life so much more than I ever did before I became a hospice nurse.
yeah. And I
Life is,
I
life
love
is
that.
short.
Oh yeah, it is so short and you just don't realize. And like I'm finding like as I'm getting older, I'm watching all these young people, like you said, people who are my age, people who are younger, and they're dying of cancer and they have all these things going on. And I think, first of all, it gives you a bit of anxiety. I'm like, and I hear stories every single day about all these people dying, obviously, because I'm channeling the dead constantly. And I have to sort of check myself and go, okay, there's nothing wrong with me because I do get that death anxiety. I've always had it. Even from a young age, I'm like, I'm going to die at 28. I'm going to die at 28. I just had this thing. And I'm nearly 36 now. I didn't die. But I feel like I always had it in me like, oh my God, fear around death and something's going to happen to me. And even today, like I said, I listen to people every single day tell me about all these young people passing. And I just have to remind myself that, you know what? It's not my time. Everything's going to be all right. And to try and live every single day as much as I can and to really appreciate everything that's around me. And when I have bad days, I sit there and I go, hell, it could be so much worse. It could be so much worse than this. I am not dealing with anything that is life or death right now. Just kind of check yourself. Because I think sometimes
Hmm.
we just go on tangents and we think this is the worst thing in the world. And oh my God, how am I going to deal with this? And then you think about those moments and those people that are dealing with so much more. And it just puts everything into perspective, truly.
Yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. And I was the same as you. Like I'm in my 20s thinking I won't live past 30. I just knew
Yeah.
that I was going to die young. I was just completely obsessed. And now I'll be 63 in September. So, I
Wow.
definitely outlived my own prognosis. But, I had the same thing. And isn't it funny too that even when you like know that there is something after this life, or you believe that, you can still feel anxiety around, like,
Yeah.
no, like people will say, are you afraid to die? And I will say, I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid to
Mm.
die anymore. I believe in an afterlife and I'm not afraid to die, but I'm not excited about it. I'm not
Mm,
like looking forward to it. Well, I'm looking forward to the dying process. Like if I get to go through, like see my dad and the people that have died before me, I think that's really cool. But I'm not like, ooh, I can't wait to die. I
mm.
want to live a really long life, just like anybody else. I want to watch my grandkids grow up and be teenagers and torment their parents like my teenagers tormented me. I look forward to being, like 90 or 100 and falling asleep in my bed and not waking up. That's how I want to go out. But,
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
think it's human nature for us to be kind of like, oh, I'm not ready
Yeah.
for that yet,
I
even if there's
agree.
something else.
And that's the thing. I believe, obviously, I do this every single
Mhm.
day. I know there's something else, but I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's like that. I'm not ready to go yet. I still have shit to do. I'm like,
Yep.
don't take me
Yep.
out yet. I'm still going. So
Yep.
that's what that's about. But I think everyone, I guess the biggest message here is live life, man. Take risks, do stuff. Like, don't hold off. I hear so many people, when I do this, then I'll do that. Or when I have this, I'll go and do that. It's like, it's never going to be the time. It'll never be the right time to do anything. If you feel pulled or inclined to do something, just go and do it. Like, why not? Why not now? You know?
Yeah. 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 So my brother and sister and I decided to go on a cruise to Alaska. I think it was probably about 7 years ago. And we were like, this is going to be the cruise of a lifetime. We're going to splurge and we're going to get the best room. And my brother's not married, and my sister and I, our husbands, were both like, yeah, we're not into cruising. So the three of us are going to go on this cruise. We're getting the top of the line suite. We're going to spend all the money and we're going to go on this cruise. And it was so much fun. And so since then, we go every other year on a cruise because it's like, you know what? You don't
I
have
love
to do
that.
a cruise of a lifetime. You can just keep going,
Yeah.
like do what makes you happy.
I love that that's become a tradition. That's so cool. You're like once in a lifetime and you're like, and again, and again. I
Yep,
love
yep.
it.
And I convinced my husband, and so he and I are going to take one in September for our 20th anniversary. So I actually did finally
Oh,
get him to agree to go on a cruise with me.
I love that. That's amazing. Oh, beautiful. Well, before we jump into my wife's questions that she has for you that are super random, which you can't prep for really, how can everyone connect with you?
I have a website, hospicenursepenny.com, and it has all the links to where you can buy my book in Australia. I just added one on there. It's on Australia, Amazon, and then there's another place in Australia that has it that I also added on to my website book page. Information about my podcast on there. And then I'm on social media. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Hospice Nurse Penny on all the socials.
Amazing. Well, I'll put all your details in the show notes so people can jump over and follow you because I absolutely love your page. That's why I was like, I have to get you
Thank
on the
you.
podcast because you're just so funny and just so real. And that's what I'm all about. So appreciate
Thank
you
you.
very much so. All right, here's your random questions. Let's see what she's got for you. Oh, this might actually be a good question for you. What's a question that someone has never asked you, but you hoped that they did?
Oh man, something someone has never asked me, but I hoped that they did. I don't know. I don't know.
It's so random. I'm like, where did you get this
That
question
is
from?
random.
And she's like, but
Yeah.
like people are waiting, like they want to tell people something, but no one's ever asked the question, so they've just
Well,
never
well,
said
by
it.
now, by now people have asked me, but so um let's think here. I mean, there's lots of things about me that I don't
Yeah.
always talk about, people don't ask me about, but I don't know how anybody would ask me the question. But um I would say like maybe um what did I don't know. Like I don't know. I can't think of anything. Honestly, I can't think of anything.
What's
I know
something
that.
that's like interesting about you that like people wouldn't know? Like they just wouldn't know that it's
Okay.
something that you do, or do you have like a hobby that
Okay.
you like to do that's random?
Uh, All right, here's something about me that not a lot of people know unless they read my book, because it is in my book.
Yeah.
So when I was getting divorced from my husband, I was trying to raise money for nursing school. So we had been married for 10 years. He was in the military. And so we didn't have a lot of money, but I didn't qualify for financial aid. And so I set up a website called helpmeleavemyhusband.com to earn money to go to nursing school. And it became world famous. I was on like talk shows, I was on radio shows in Ireland and the UK and like
Oh,
all over the
my
place. So
God.
that was my first 15 minutes of fame
Oh, so
is
that would
that
be the
website.
question. What was your
Yeah.
15 minutes of fame? It was that. I
Yeah,
love
that was
that. Oh,
it.
we
That
came
was
full
it.
circle. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your name backwards and use it in a sentence?
Oh, I can't. Okay. Oh, what is my name backwards? And use it. Well, it's Yanep. Uh, Yanep. Yanep one. I can't figure out how to use my name backwards in a sentence.
Oh my God, that's so good. Oh my gosh, you make me laugh. Okay, your last question. If you were a dog, what color are you and what is your name?
I'm an Irish setter and I'm red, and my name is Penny because I was named after a dog named Penny.
Are
Oh,
you serious?
yeah, that's your random, that's the question that nobody ever asked me is how did my parents come up with my name? They named me after a dog.
Oh my, isn't that so weird that that's relatable to you? This is what
Yeah.
always happens on the podcast. One question is somehow really relatable. I reckon my wife's psychic in some way. That's so cool. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for being here. It has been so amazing to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was